Well, geography makes us neighbors and trade makes us partners. I'm talking about the relationship between Canada and the United States. Well, to talk more about this increasingly complicated relationship with the U.S. is our foreign affairs correspondent, Lisa Daftari, who joins us from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome back. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, so there is so much division right now between Canada and the U.S. Lately over this trade war that could be on the horizon. And it has even reached a point where Canadians and Americans are booing each other's national anthems at sporting events. I can't believe I would have ever lived to see that day. But while Canada
Right.
has taken steps to improve border security and help repair relations with our country's biggest trading partner, we feel that we've taken the right steps. So why so much animosity from President Donald Trump?
You know, and I'm not here to defend him, but I think what he is attempting to do in his first month in office is to take steps so that the global community and those who are in step with U.S. interests politically and economically can really grow closer together and find even more ways to collaborate. And this is his tough love way of doing that. And again, this is according to him and his advisors, the way that he came in and he put in the tariffs, and already, as you said, the border is more secure. Well, that's one way to do it. For 4 years we saw um, you know things that were affecting both the United States and Canada. Look, if there are unsecure borders, whether it's our southern border or our northern border, Canada is going to face the detriment for that as well. So, we're talking about national security. We want to keep Canada safe. We want to keep the United States safe. And hopefully, going down into Central and South America, we can have more accountability, more vetting, and not allow, drugs to come through, fentanyl to come through. You can have, bad actors come through. How many, hundreds of people coming through our border that have been detected on the FBI's most wanted list or on the FTO, the foreign terror list. And again, those are only the ones that have been detected. How about the ones who got away and have not come under scrutiny yet? So I think these steps, are being taken, but hopefully it will lead to a place where there could be better collaboration in our continent.
Yeah, speaking of collaboration, for the first time ever in history, all of Canada's provincial and territorial premiers met at the same time in Washington, D.C. last week. And of course, the purpose was to discuss the threat of tariffs. And they felt that the meetings were successful, but some think those meetings proved not to be fruitful as our country still faces the threat of tariffs. So, how do you, as an American, see it?
This is a very America first, and as it should be, America first, Canada first, Mexico first, France first. If every country would prioritize their national security, would prioritize their economy and the free market to allow that organic economy to grow, to flourish, to have jobs, to have, have imports, have exports, just really thrive. I think we'll be in a better place. And I think that this is something that I hope is contagious. When you have a leader like Donald Trump, love him or hate him, he has shown the world that in only a month, the steps that can be taken to really pivot to this is what will help with our interests. This is what will help keep our border safe. This is what will help with our trade, with our economy, with our gas prices in the long run. So look, again, there's so much to be said about his approach, but I do think that speaking and putting Donald Trump aside, but speaking just from an aerial view, if you want to talk about what's going on around the world, if you want to look at what's going on in Europe, Europe has completely lost the script. Where is their handle on national security when you have so many stabbings at kindergarten over ideology, over radical ideology, or where you have the economy is abysmal, just tanking. And if you look at so many of the elections across Europe that have been either there have been referendums, there have been a move to the right. This is the and my point, to wrap it around, is to say there's a pendulum swinging here. And that pendulum is swinging more in the direction of common sense. And common sense dictates that we should have a strong economy, that we should have national security, that we should protect our borders. And I hope that, we come as more to the center in terms of understanding that this will help everyone across the board.
Do you think the premier's coming to Washington, D.C. was a successful trip?
I do. I think, look, in general, whenever a foreign leader visits the White House, it is a successful trip because, in and of itself, it means that there is some sort of discussion happening. There's diplomacy taking place. That conversation, whether it's comfortable, uncomfortable, whether there are agreements or disagreements, there is some sort of coming together. And again, he's only been in office for a month, so we're just getting the ball started. We're getting these conversations going. We're getting, that dialogue going. And I think it's always a good thing to have communication.
Absolutely. Okay, switching gears here. So, U.S. and Israeli officials are considering a joint military strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. This comes as tensions are escalating in the Middle East. So, tell us more about what's happening there, Lisa.
Yeah, so, another day in the Middle East, right? As of October 7th, we've seen this back and forth in a war that is anything but traditional, right? A war is when one side provokes, there's an exchange of shots, and then there's some sort of treaty, some sort of surrender, the war comes to an end. A war of ideology doesn't come to an end. It just continues to spread and to fester. And when you have leaders from the terror group Hamas swearing to have more October 7th again and again and again, it's very difficult to contain this type of ideology and to stop it. It's like playing whack-a-mole, right? So there's no way to stop that. You can stop the funders. You can go to the Islamic Republic and stop the funders, but there's no way to stop this ideology from spreading. With the United States and Israel considering a joint strike on the Islamic Republic, the regime inside Iran, there's no surprise. It's something that is on the table. Maybe they shouldn't discuss it, but we do know that all options are on the table. That is the slap on the wrist to give the regime, the Ayatollah, the message that this is not something that's going to be tolerated. You can't continue supporting, you can't continue funding and training terrorists in the region, whether it's Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. You cannot do this. And putting them on notice by striking their nuclear facilities. The other thing that Donald Trump has sworn is that the Iran regime cannot have a nuclear weapon. Now, over the last couple of years, we have heard various deadlines. They're a week away, they're a month away, they're a year away. Well, we've passed all of those deadlines. So either they are very close to getting a bomb or they have the bomb. And either way, this is not something that we want to risk. So when you have a regime that is this rogue, well, what would help is to set them back in their nuclear weapons program and to deliver the message of deterrence that the new sheriff in the White House will not tolerate this behavior.
And we have officials from Trump's administration who met with Russian officials on Tuesday in Saudi Arabia to discuss ending the war with Ukraine. But Ukraine wasn't invited to this. So why was Ukraine excluded from the meeting, Lisa?
Yeah, a very interesting meeting where Zelensky is very upset that he was excluded from the meeting. Putin has said that he was very happy with the meetings, but that not to worry, Ukraine obviously won't be left out of the final say. And how could they? This is a ceasefire, a truce between two sides when one side's missing. Right. I do think this is, again, getting the ball rolling. Putin, not your typical or traditional level-headed leader that you could sit down with and have this, level-headed conversation of common sense. So, I think that the U.S. wanted to take his temperature. They met in Saudi Arabia, completely neutral territory in this sense, not neutral in other ways. But to meet, to get, to feel where he's at, see what they can offer, and then go back to Zelensky. This is what's going on. In the meantime, Zelensky is losing his marbles. He's not very happy about this. He feels like he was left out. The bottom line is we want this very senseless war to end. It's been dragged on forever and ever, and not something that, we'll see. We'll see what the concessions end up being. But I think the United States and Russia want to be in a place where they can go back to Zelensky and say, listen, you don't have many options. They've invaded your country. X percentage, maybe 20% or more of the country is already under Russian control. So here's your best offer, and then to take it from there. And I hope that that is something that happens very quickly and decisively, and that Zelensky is on board.
Why would the U.S. be involved in that meeting? And why wouldn't they insist that Ukraine be sitting there at the table with them?
Yeah, and it's a great question. I think that this is something that hasn't happened, right? If it were to happen between the two sides organically, it would have happened already. China came in and said, we think the United States would be a good recommendation for somebody who could broker this. And it's interesting because obviously China would want to be involved, but they're too far embedded in this war, selling weapons to Russia, and they've already involved themselves. They're not somebody who could be that honest broker. So it's got to be, the new Trump administration that comes in. This is something that Trump even campaigned on. He said, I'm going to stop this war. It's not something that, it's something that he thought he could do very easily. So we shall see how easy this is, or if it easily comes about. But just the fact that we have sent representatives to start the conversation, just the fact that Putin has come. Look, Putin is a much harder sell than Zelensky, right? He's the aggressor. He is the madman. So to bring him to the table, I think, is a much more difficult feat. See where he stands and what he wants, and then to go back to Zelensky. I think if we brought them both to the table, we might not have been able to get Putin to agree to certain things. So we shall see. I think there's perhaps a method to this madness, and the proof will be in whether or not we have a ceasefire soon.
Yeah, and I think Putin had said that a lot of this depends on the level of trust between Moscow and Washington as well. But meanwhile,
Right.
we've got Trump, who's sort of denounced Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky as, what did he say? He quoted him as a dictator without elections, and said he had better move fast to secure peace or he won't have a country left.
Right.
What does Trump mean by this? Is it sort of disrespectful?
Kind of. He's bullying his way to a ceasefire. He's basically telling Zelensky, "This is what I think of you. You've basically power grabbed your way, to be where you are," which is ironic given the fact that we're dealing with Putin on the other side. But he's basically saying, "Look, I'm going to belittle you in order to get you to come around and not really play me like a fiddle the way you did the Biden administration." And that is in the eyes of many lawmakers here in the United States, feeling as though Zelensky really milked the situation. He got a lot of funding that we don't know where that is. This is US taxpayer money, right? How many times did he come to Congress? How many times did he make the petition that he needs more money, more weapons, more this, more that? And then he was given many generous checks. And I think Trump wants to say, we're done. We're done with that. That's not going to happen anymore. You were able to do what you did. You did your paragraph. You're still in power. And here's a great offer I'm going to put on the table for you. So I think he's really just setting the stage, really playing his real estate hand. This is how you cut a deal with someone. You kind of belittle their property and you try to cut a good deal. So I think that's the way he's approaching this right now.
Okay, I'm going to jump, into something else completely here. So there's a British couple, Craig and Lindsay Foreman, who had previously appeared on Britain's Channel 4, a show called A New Life in the Sun program. So they were traveling through Iran on a round-the-world trip when they were detained on espionage charges. And they're being held in prison now. So insiders and campaigners believe that they were arrested simply for being British. So what other details can you provide us, Lisa, about this?
This is entirely from the Mullah's handbook. And that's why you see whenever there is, some sort of hostage taking in Iran itself, it's by the government, and it's always some sort of Western country, and it's always charges of espionage, because that is the basically blanket charge that they could put over anybody. And it's kangaroo court, so who's going to prove it? It's just a trumped up charge that means nothing. Why do they do this? They're taking pawns. That's how they flex to the West. If you recall, when they came into office, remember the Iran the hostage crisis, where they took all the members of the embassy and consulate inside Iran, the Americans that were held there. It was between Carter and when Reagan came into office, was able to get them freed, but horrific ordeal that set the tone for this regime that had just come into power after toppling the Shah of Iran. This is something that they do. And they really are in a very weakened and compromised position right now with Trump being in office. He has reinstated the pressure campaign with new sanctions. Obviously, a very different tone than we saw from the Biden White House, that was releasing billions of dollars, that was giving them money for hostages, that was paying the ransom, that was allowing them to sell oil north of $100 billion, that was looking the other way when the regime was selling weapons to North Korea and Russia and China. So I think, things are obviously very different, but it also leaves the Iran regime in a very vulnerable position. So this is what they do when they feel that they are under pressure. So, why were they traveling in such a hostile country
That's
anyway
what
is the
I wanted
question.
to
I think
know.
there's a lot of, there's a lot of naivete, especially among people who are these kinds of world travelers that are, well, wow, it'll be fine. Well, no, this is what happens. This is the reality of political Islam in play, and this is a manifestation of that,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
exactly. Do some research and pay attention to the countries that you're traveling into for sure. Lisa, we're out of time here, but thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
That is our foreign affairs correspondent, Lisa Daftari, who joined us from Los Angeles today. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks so much for watching.